Hello, my name is Tracy Sinclair, and welcome to Coaching in Conversation, the Mastery Series. This series of conversations explores the concept of mastery in coaching. And I have the great pleasure of talking with several ICF Master Certified coaches from around the world to understand what mastery really means to them, both as coaching practitioners and also as human beings. We explore many different perspectives and nuances of this topic, and I hope it is of use and interest to you as you continue to navigate your own pathway of development. Hello, it's Tracy Sinclair here with another episode of Coaching in Conversation. This time an episode which is focusing on our Mastery series, and I have the absolute pleasure of talking with Wai K Leong, who is a wonderful coach from Asia. Wai K Leong actually has been very key in developing and being a pioneer of coaching across Asia, across his region, as well as specifically in Malaysia. He has been a chapter president of ICF Malaysia and has also been a global board director and ICF global board vice president, which is where I connected with Wai some years ago because we had the great pleasure of being board colleagues together at the ICF. And apart from his work volunteering for the ICF, YK has also got a school in Malaysia where he teaches coaching level 1, 2 and 3, and also coach training. He's also an author, and he has written a book around empowering Asian mindsets through coaching, as well as other books around coaching performance with tips and thoughts on mastering coaching. I also know, which he has shared with us in this session, that he has another book which is almost done, I believe, around mastering coaching. So we are very, very well placed to talk to Wai. He's a wonderful human being as well as a fantastic coach, and some of his work has also been recognised by him winning an ICF Circle of Distinction Award in 2019 and the APAC Best Coach Gold Award in 2021. So the perfect person to talk about this topic. I really hope you enjoy this episode, and it's called The 3 Levels of Mastery. Well, hello, Wai. It's lovely to catch up with you. I know in our conversation just now, we were realizing that it's probably about 6 years since we actually were together in a meeting. And I can't believe how quickly that's gone by. And it truly is such a pleasure to reconnect with you today. And I'm really, really looking forward to hearing what your thoughts are on mastery and coaching. Before we go into that specifically, please just tell us a little bit about your journey in coaching and how you got to be in the place that you're in today.
Okay. So firstly, thank you, Tracy, for inviting me to your podcast. And yes, it was a delight catching up with you. So how did I get started into coaching was not so much of a passion, but more of a necessity. So if I look back at the time I got started in coaching, it was way back in 1995, 96. I was with an organization and they promoted me to become a general manager at a relatively young age at that time. And my concept of leadership was, I must say now, a bit flawed. Within 6 months of my tenure as a general manager, 2 of my senior staff resigned. So my boss had a pep talk with me and I decided to embark on a leadership development journey. And a long story short, at that time, internet was not very fast. It was a dial-up thing. And I managed to connect to this gentleman called Thomas Leonard. And he was very generous in sharing coaching tools, tips, and so on. And I picked up a few and I just tried it out, changed my conversation from directing to questioning, from being an expert to being a learner. And I found that my engagement with my team increased. So that actually enthused me in terms of learning more about how to coach even more effectively. So that started my journey really. And I applied coaching for about 4 years in an organization. And then I decided to come out and start this coaching business, um, sharing with leaders what coaching is and is not, and how they can use it in their leadership. Yeah. So that was how I got started.
Wow, that's fantastic. I mean, two things really strike me about that, Why. One is how you came into coaching through experiencing a challenge in your own leadership, style or skills or whatever, and how coaching supported you in that. That's wonderful. But also, I hadn't realized that you had connected directly with Thomas Leonard. So for those listeners who may not know, some of them may not know that Thomas Leonard was one of the founding gurus, I guess, or leaders and pioneers in the field of modern coaching, and actually was the person that was responsible for the creation of the ICF in the first place, and first ever, I believe, coach training program. So you've been right in there
Yes,
from day
I've
one.
been
That's
privileged
fantastic.
to just happened to stumble on his website, communicated a little bit with him through email, and yeah, the rest was history.
It was history, as they say. That's fantastic. Oh, and I love that story. Well, and now here we are today, all of that time later, talking about mastery. Um, and I'd love to hear your perspective, I guess, initially of what does this word concept of mastery mean to you when you think of that?
So Um, I've been thinking about this question about 5 years ago because I have started a book called Masterful Coaching. And it's about 90% complete. And I gave very deep thought about what is really coaching mastery. So, um, and I have discovered from my own experience and research that mastery in any trade, not just coaching, whether you are a sportsman, whether you are a craftsman, um, or a musician, um, there are generally 3 or 4 elements that describe masterful performance. And I see mastery as more of a journey rather than destination, that every rung of a ladder, when we climb, we become better and more effective, um, or more masterful from where we started. So I think there are 3 ingredients if I were to apply that into coaching. One is technical mastery, which is really about mastering the competencies, and in ICF terms, the 8 competencies. The second mastery is really self-mastery, how we upgrade our own operating system as a human being, and how we connect with people, and how we are able to put aside our biases and all those other things that make coaching a challenge, good coaching a challenge. And the third level of mastery really is about situational mastery, that masterful coaches or masterful tradesmen, they have invested so many hours in terms of trying new things, experimenting with it, that they're able to um, to use their experience and wisdom to approach a certain client um, from their wealth of experience. So technical versus self and situation, I think these three areas are very important.
Mm.
Um, but of these three, I think what is most important is self. Um, that a lot of time I find that from my experience, my self hinders great coaching. And it is in my desire to help people change. It is like my intent to create awareness in them, to create aha moment. Those kind of situations actually worked against the coaching conversation. And I have come to use analogy is like masterful coaching is like a mirror. And I tell this to my staff. I said, how do you know you are towards mastery? When you can operate just like a mirror. All right. And what does a mirror do? All of us, in fact, have been coached every day by our mirror. We wake up, we look at the mirror and say, I don't like my hairstyle. I don't like my dress. I need to make a change. Right. So a mirror doesn't hold any judgment. It just purely reflect back what who you are and how you look, with no good or bad. And you make that choice. So when we are getting closer and closer towards being mirror-like, we tend to be able to give feedback with no judgment. All right. We tend to give feedback with no intention to change the person. All right. It's just purely this is how I'm noticing. All right. And how does it land with you? Is it something that you comfortable with? Is it something that you want to do something about? So being like a mirror is a good analogy in my mind to help people reflect on where they are in the journey.
Mm. Well, I love the metaphor of the mirror, of course, and what a lovely way to position the non-judgment and the clean, perspective, if you like, that's being offered. And I also love these three levels that you've talked about. So I'd love to talk a little bit about those. I guess level one, the first level, the first step, is a fairly straightforward one. As you're saying, we need to be technically solid and skilled and grounded and practiced and consistent. And we have training courses and credentials and mentor coaching and all of those things that support us with that. And of course, I guess lots of hours of practice. I'd love to maybe focus a bit more on the other two.
Sure.
One of the ways you talked about the working on self. One of the ways that I've articulated that is the distinction between the doing of coaching, i.e. that technical level, and the being of the coach. How am I actually being? So I'd love to hear a little bit more of your thoughts on, what does that ask of us? I guess it's what am I trying to say? When we learn a skill, we're very focused, aren't we, on learning how to use a skill with and for someone else. And yet what we're saying now with this work on self is actually, no, the work I need to do now is on me. So what's needed in order for us to be able to do that, do you think, in your perspective?
So I find that as we learn coaching, as I teach my students and I get feedback from them, one of the things in which they most often mention is that this is a fabulous skill. Not only do we learn how to help others, we learn to discover about ourselves and um, how we can use our strength and how our strength can sometimes be our weakness in terms of helping people change. So So I find that in terms of learning the technical part of it, the process of learning where you're coached and you're being coached, help one to discover themselves. And just today we had a certification class, and one of the students just walked up to me and say that, I gained so much more than just learning the technical skills of coaching. I learned about myself. I learned and I discovered how my relationship was not working at certain situations, and I have an awareness on why that's happening. So that's the beautiful part about coaching as a modality, that we not only help people, we in turn help ourselves more. Um, and as I look into this, I find that what's the difference between a competent coach versus a masterful coach? I think the distinction is, like you have just mentioned, the doing and being part. They become one. That the masterful coach probably do not see themselves as doing it. They are always immersed in a flow, that who they are is how they express themselves. That they are no longer using logic to navigate the conversation, but they are also combining it with their intuitive talent in terms of informing what to do, you know. Um, and I think one of the distinction of a masterful coach really is they're able to master presence, that they can actually call on being fully present, um, like in the snap of a finger. They are in the flow, whereas beginning coaches, or even sometimes competent coaches, they have to remind themselves to listen. They have to remind themselves to be present. So it's like masterful coaches, it's just part of them. They are so immersed into the conversation that they don't see themselves doing it.
Mm, mm. There's something almost, well, I suppose it's this idea of unconscious competence was coming into my mind in a way, that we're in a flow and a mindset that is not being consciously driven by, I need to do this or I ought to do that.
Yes.
And if
Yes.
anything, if I'm understanding you correctly, that voice could then get in the way. We get in our own way when we start to try to perform.
Yes. Yes. So, and yes, and I think another sign of mastery is when you see that the person has let go of systems, structure, and processes. Most of the time, when I mentor MCC, they tend to ask me, so what are some things that we need to be mindful of to do? And so they are still bounded by structures, that I must tick this off and I must tick that and I must ask this question and I must do that. And I find that once you reach mastery, your intuition informs you what the client needs best. And it's not the things that you think that you need to check off against. And that's where intuition comes in. That's where experience comes in. And sometimes the coach can just go out of the coaching modality and do something that is useful for the client.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah. And still mindful enough to come back to coaching and continue the conversation.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah.
So that I'm hearing this move away from structures and processes to flow, to intuition. And if a coach was to say to you, why, well, that all makes sense, but how do I do that? How do I nurture my intuition? How do I grow my self-awareness and work on myself? What would your response be to something like that?
So That's a question I get asked pretty often, especially new coaches. They say 8 competencies, and there are so many things to be mindful of in each competency that is so overwhelming. Yeah, I can understand that, right? So if you're trying to force a certain idea concept into a conversation, then we end up doing. And my advice to them really is that while you're aware now of the range and depth of things you need to do to display some of these competencies, when you're really coaching, throw all those away. Just be fully present, be fully interested, have a learner's mind, take away your expert mind, and be totally curious, childlike almost, and listen, and the questions will come naturally. Only after the conversation, then reflect back. What do I know in terms of displaying good listening, good questioning? What did I do in that session that has actually done some of these things? And what can I do differently in the next round? So rather than forcing tools, techniques into a conversation, my advice for them, my students, would be like, put aside all those things, all right, and just be completely curious and have a learner's mindset.
Mm, mm. Thank you, Wai. And I'm also thinking from your own perspective, knowing yourself as you do and how you've followed this pathway to mastery, what are some of the lessons that you've learned for yourself about your own mastery in terms of your own self-awareness?
So, and I'm still sharpening my tool. That's why I'm saying that it's not a destination to say that I've arrived. It's like I've climbed more rungs of a ladder, and hence I have more ammunition to work with my clients to help them to gain awareness. And yet, there are still parts of me that I need to continue sharpening. There's still parts of me that I find sometimes when I am distracted by personal matters that I cannot be fully present. And I tell my client, today I'm not at my best. So if you want to postpone the session, it's fine with me. But I will, pull on everything to serve you. So I let them know. And I find that one of the things that I have gained over the years is um, the courage to share what I think used to be could be hurtful for the client. All right. And when I look back at my journey, there were times where I held back my observations when, in fact, I think it would be useful for the client to know. It might or might not hurt the client, but that was the thought I have. But now I've learned to trust my intuition. I've learned to give feedback in such a way as it would look neutral and yet objective enough for the person to look at. Yeah. So those are my journey.
Mm,
Yeah.
mm. Thank you. I love what you're talking about there around the courage to share more transparently or to challenge or whatever that might be. And I'm thinking that in the previous set of competencies, this I think was possibly more clearly articulated than it is currently, that part of mastery and coaching is to not just be okay with not knowing, but to also be okay with discomfort of both your client and your own, that we can both be in that space of the discomfort of needing to draw upon our courage, or being uncomfortable with not knowing what's going on, or whatever it might be. So I'm just really it's great that you've touched there on that idea of I have to be out of my comfort zone if I'm going to work masterfully. There are times when I will go outside of my own comfort zone, and not only my client.
Yes. Yes. So true. And the more I find that the more areas I feel uncomfortable with, those informs me of the areas I need to grow into.
Yeah, what a great barometer or mirror. It's another mirror, isn't it?
Yes.
Back to us.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes. Yes.
yeah,
So rather than avoiding the unpleasantness, I think masterful coaches tends to confront and even to face that and feel that discomfort.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That's fascinating. And if I could just go back to something you said a couple of minutes ago, why you said that, you're still sharpening your saw, and maybe there are times when you are not 100% yourself, if you like, which of course is very normal. We fluctuate, don't we, as human beings? Um, does that mean then that mastery can be more or less present for us, as opposed to something that we just suddenly reach and then it's there forever, as a fixed quality? I'm picking up a sense of it could come and go almost, and I just want to check and explore that idea with you.
Yes, I tend to believe from my experience that um, masterful work has many factors involved. Um, One part of it is really your competencies, who you are, and your experiences. And the other part of the equation is really how aware the client is. If the level of awareness of the client is high, then the output, the creative work that comes out from that collaboration can be very beautiful. However, if the client's awareness is not very high, then no matter how masterful you are, you might not create masterful work. So that's the second part of the equation. And really, sometimes we are, for example, I am at certain times I am at my peak form. It's like I'm fully present, and I'm not aware of anything else but my client and I. All right. And there are times where I go on and off, pulling myself back, and stuff like this. So it's not consistently, once you reach that stage, you produce masterful work. It's like um, it's a situation where you need to work on it harder sometimes when you're not in an optimal form.
Mm, mm. Thank you. That's lovely, which I guess speaks to what you were saying about it's not a destination. It's a process. It's a journey. It's a pathway, a lifelong one, I guess.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I share with my students is that you have just started a journey that has no end.
How lovely that the fun never ends. That's
Keep
fantastic.
walking.
Yeah, yeah. And I'd love, if I may, we've still got maybe a little bit of time, a few more minutes. I'd love to hear a little bit more about the level 3 part that you mentioned, why, around the situational mastery, I think you called it. So tell us a little bit more about that.
So situation mastery to me is probably like if you are a craftsman working on a sculpture, and you're presented with a piece of wood, all right? Um, so if you have carved thousands of woods before, and you look at this structure of this wood, you will probably know that I need to approach it this way rather than this way. So those kind of experience um, comes wisdom, how you approach a certain client. And certain clients require your approach to be a bit stronger. Certain clients require more of affiliative kind of connection before they are ready to explore deeper. So those kind of situations, if you have enough experience, you can draw on. And just like a Formula One driver, when they drive in different circuits throughout the world, they will know at this point I must do this in this circuit. So those are the situational mastery.
Mm, mm. Yeah. So there's a couple of things you're making me think about there. One is this idea then of not just coach as much as you can, but coach as many different kinds of clients as you can, so that you've got the variety of situations, a bit like the Formula One driver that doesn't only do Formula One in the UK, they do Formula One in other countries, so that they've got the variety and the diversity of experience. And the other thing that was coming up was, in our 8 competency model, we talk, don't we, about context, understanding the client's context, their situation, their background, their culture, their values, their beliefs. So that seems to be speaking to this idea of their situation, their unique situation.
Yes. So true. It's like even within the same circuit, for example, Formula One driver drives. Sometimes it could be a rainy season, sometimes it could be a dry season, sometimes you've got a car smashed in front of you and how you avoid it. So not just culture from different countries, but even within the same country, different personalities and so on. So the more we coach, the more we reflect and learn from it, the more arsenal we have in our toolkit to help our clients.
Yeah, that's fabulous. Well, time flies, Wai. I don't know where the time has gone, but we've got a few more minutes left, and I'm just wondering, what else would you like to share around this topic that might be useful to our listeners around mastery that perhaps we've not covered? Anything else that you'd like to bring in?
So I would probably say that one of the important ingredients towards mastery is self-reflection. The quality of after every session to reflect back what worked, why it worked, and what didn't work, and what can I try differently. So as we self-reflect, we picked up nuances much faster than when we don't self-reflect. So, yeah.
Well, thank you. A fantastic advertisement for reflective practice there, which of course is so important, isn't it? And I love the fact that reflective practice now, particularly in competency 2, is much more in the foreground now of something that we should be thinking about. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Wai. I can't believe the richness of what you've shared. I love this idea of these 3 levels of mastery. When will your book be finished?
It has been in gestation for quite a while, on and off. I would come back to it. I hope to launch it sometime early next year. Keeping my finger crossed.
Well, I'll keep my fingers crossed too, because it sounds as though that would be a phenomenal book. So I really, really look forward to that. Hope our listeners will look forward to it as well. And thank you again, Wai, for taking the time to talk to me today.
Thank you, Tracy, for having me in the session.
Thank you.
Bye.
You have been listening to Coaching in Conversation, the Mastery Series, a podcast that takes a look at mastery in coaching, what it is, what that means, how do we nurture or cultivate it, and many other interesting questions. You can hear more about coaching education and development at tracysinclair.com and follow us on social media. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a rating and a review. and also share it with your network to help us expand our reach. Thank you for listening, and see you next time.